So we're excited to have Brad Mitchell on today. As some people know, we were actually on the opposite side of many cases. We've actually tried a couple cases against each other. So it is kind of nice to have both plaintiff lawyers and defense lawyers coming together and, having a cordial discussion and an interview and find out a little bit more about one another. So we're certainly excited. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me on the podcast. I am honored to be here, and I think it's great that we have a dialogue where both sides, as we said before the podcast, we can get along.
Yeah, it's sometimes tough because it's, we're both zealously advocating for our clients a lot of times. As we know, we could get a little hot under the collar. All right, Rolf?
Well, not me. I mean, Brad. Brad almost had a heart attack the first time we tried a case. He kept walking out like really mad.
So that's actually one of the things I'll eventually get to today. I think it was funny. It was a funny moment in one of the trials that we had. And it's one of the funnier moments that I've had in trials, certainly. And but that just is a testament to how Brad tries his cases and how you feel strongly about your cases and about your clients. So you're, certainly one of the better trial lawyers we've ever gone up against.
I appreciate that.
Phenomenal. So that's why we're really excited to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And by the way, this is just an open forum. We can all talk a little bit about, where we were born, kind of our background, what got us into the law, but just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hold on. Before you continue, I just want to mention how, when Brad came in and we first tried a case against you, I thought I brought energy to the trial, and I said my opening, and you went up there, and it was like a thunderstorm, and I felt like I was like the drizzling rain, and I'm usually the high energy because I always go against people that put you to sleep, but you kind of brought that energy, which elevated both of our game because I feel comfortable that way too, so I'm like, hey, you know what, well, let's go. Let's do it.
Well, that's really nice to hear.
It was, and so everybody knows it was a mistrial. So we didn't beat him. He didn't beat us that first time. It was a mistrial. We kind of tied. So,
right.
But go ahead. I just kind of wanted to set the stage.
No, listen, I appreciate that. And as Frank said, I'm a big believer in you give 100% in the courtroom. When you come out of the courtroom, you can be friendly, you can be cordial, you just give it all you got. And that's how I grew up, right? So you asked how I grew up, where I grew up. I grew up in a suburban area on Long Island in New York. My parents didn't have much money. I don't think anyone in my immediate family had gone to college. So I think I'm the first one who had gone to graduate school, et cetera.
Wow.
Kind of had a little bit of a rough background. I grew up with divorced parents. And then unfortunately, my mother and father did not take care of themselves and ended up passing away when I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, they, cancer, diabetes, things have really, not taking care of your health is really big for me because I saw what happened with them when I was 7. And so grew up after that happened, went to live with my grandparents who really instilled in me a lot of good old school values. I mean, from people who were born in 1919, you can imagine they instill in you, respect and love and things that you really need to become hopefully a successful adult. And that, I think, propelled me wanting to be an attorney. I think I saw, without getting into too many details, a lot of fighting, whether it was, for estates and money and things like that over the years. And I feel like people need advocates. Whatever side that you decide to be on, you need somebody to give 100%. And I think that fire comes from a lot of trauma, a lot of what I saw and how to overcome that trauma over the years.
Yeah, we certainly didn't know that about you. And I think that that's one of the things that I like about doing these interviews because we, again, are on opposite sides a lot of times. But getting to know someone like that really kind of lets you know who they are on a much deeper level.
Right.
So obviously, I'm sorry about your loss.
I appreciate it.
I'm sure it was very difficult growing up, and but it seems like you had the support of your grandparents, which is certainly nice.
Definitely.
But I can see that. I had a feeling you were kind of a New Yorker, but now I know for sure. Maybe Jersey, New York, but
right.
I knew that was in you. But definitely the fight is there, and now we know why, certainly.
Right.
And so you went to undergrad, obviously. Where'd you go to undergrad?
So I started in New York. I went to Hofstra University on Long Island. I ended up making some jumps for reasons related to past issues, and I ended up transferring down to Nova for finishing my undergrad. And then I ended up at Rutgers Law School, first year of law school. Did my first year there, and I transferred to FSU in Tallahassee.
Oh,
okay.
What year was that?
2009, I went to Rutgers, and then 10 and 11, was Florida State University. Yeah.
Okay, so you actually graduated from FSU Law? Is that
FSU Law.
Oh, okay. Okay.
that's
For some
terrible.
reason, I guess I got it in the inverse. I thought you was,
Right.
but it was Nova Law actually. So
No.
it's FSU
Right,
Law.
that's what I thought
FSU.
it was.
Oh, okay.
So
Yep.
first, wait, you went to Nova and then you went to
Right, so Nova completed the undergrad, and then for
Got it.
law school, it was Rutgers first year and then FSU.
So you first started. You said it's really cold up here. You moved down. Said it's hot down here. Moved back up. Realized it was cold again, and then came
There's
back down.
a little more to it, some family things to wrap up there, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, this is where to be. I mean, who doesn't want to live in South Florida? This
Yeah.
is
Sure, yeah.
this is where you need to be.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And Ralph, too, you can obviously give us a little bit about your background as well. And
I feel like I'm the Ed McMahon to the,
Such as Johnny and
Johnny Carson. I'm the Ed McMahon, and I'll just lean over and say something, then just keep going. But I ask you because we're all roughly around the same years.
Right.
I'm a 2008 grad.
Oh, okay.
Frank's 29, 209, 210. So
10,
we're
yeah.
kind of, I think we may even be before you.
to be fair, you
1
should have
year.
been like a 2005 grad.
Yeah, I should have done it.
I should have too. I skipped.
You should
Yeah,
have too.
yeah.
Yeah, I did the 7.5 year. I did a long time in college and then and experienced various colleges, and I took my time. And did you? I guess going with Frank said, did you always want to be a lawyer?
So it's kind of cliche, but I watched The Firm with Tom Cruise, and I read the book when I was
great
a
movie.
teenager, and that just encapsulated me there. Just to see, I know not all firms are like that, where they're representing mafia and gangsters and things, but to see Tom Cruise and the style back then, the Porsche and the suspenders, and representing the clients in billing, it had me hooked.
And making the copies on the machines with the files, right? And then Gene Hackman, rest in peace, was a great film.
Oh,
Fantastic
fantastic.
film. I think every law student should watch The Firm. It's a phenomenal.
And believe nothing that's in that movie. Nothing. That is, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he a tax lawyer in the movie?
I think he was.
I think he was a tax attorney.
He was a tax attorney, but they also did like some other stuff, and they were just kind of washing the like those firms were washing the
Washing the money,
laundering.
right.
Yeah.
They were laundering. They were doing something that some firms have done. I mean, it is true. It's not like obviously they don't send people out to kill you.
Yeah.
And the guy they sent out to get Tom Cruise was like really like overweight. So he would never catch Tom Cruise.
Oh, the old man, right?
Tom
With the
Cruise
glasses,
runs like faster than everyone. But anyway.
But yeah, that hooked me right there. And lo and behold, after a short stint in finance, I was a broker in New York for about 7 years during the heyday of 2001, where
wow.
things were rocking and rolling. A little bit too crazy a lifestyle, so I said, go back to school and finally accomplish my dream of being an attorney.
What sort of broker were you, though?
Stockbroker.
Oh, a stockbroker? Okay.
You were like on the
Okay.
floor? Like
Not on the floor, but in Long Island, they had a lot of firms where we did a lot of cold calling and getting
penny
clients.
stocks. Uh-oh.
No penny stocks.
The Wolf of Wall Street here.
That's right.
Not quite Jordan Belfort, but that was a lot of high energy. But that doesn't make you very stable because the market's constantly, as you know, going up and down.
Well, kind of on that, and this is a little off topic, but what do you think about the markets now, considering all the political maneuverings? And do you think it's just the stock market reacting? Just obviously they react to anything, right? Somebody sneezes and all of a sudden it goes up or down.
Right.
You think they'll correct itself, or do you think it was just kind of a little high to begin with?
I do have an opinion on that because I went through the 2008 recession.
Sure.
And obviously, among other people, I lost a boatload of money in that recession in the stock market. And I saw that Obama had to kind of pump money into the system to keep it stable.
Sure.
So that being said, I think we were overdue for a recession. And I think the tariffs are going to push us in that direction. So I personally think that we're going to go into a recession. Do I think it's going to be anything like 2008? No, but I think we've got some downturn to go. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, I think that is the prediction, at least
Temporarily,
50,
right?
50 to 60% chance or likelihood of going into a recession now. So
Yeah. I think
it may get
Goldman
a
just
little-
came out too, and they said
Yeah.
60%
60.
chance. Yeah.
Well, like they say, it's interesting as to whether the stock market is really the economy, right? Is it or is it not, right? Obviously, we know it's tied in, people's retirements, all that stuff. But at the same time, jobs reports are high, they're good. So if that, it'll be a weird balance now. We're kind of in no man's land, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
I think
let's all
that's-
cross our fingers.
Yeah,
Obviously for us, all of us.
I agree. I think, like I said, I think we'll hit a little dip, and then we're strong. I think we'll come out of it. In a
And
year.
Frank, how about you?
In terms of what?
No, wanting to be a lawyer. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard your story, despite knowing you since.
It's not a great story. That's probably why.
Well, okay, I know, but why did
being humble, I'm
so
sure.
what made you kind of go into the law? I mean, you're a baseball player, right? So
I was, and
really?
coincidentally,
Bit of a jock.
a little bit.
Oh, I
He
didn't
but-
was, guys. You see, actually, you see that guy right? He was a hell of an athlete.
I was okay. I was okay. But I think that, for a lot of people, I think the 2008 crash was an indicator that we needed to do something else, right? I think a lot of people experienced that at our age. We started to see that in 2004, 2005, give or take. I was still an undergrad. I was working in real estate. I was working also at a law firm that did closings. And at the time, I really just kind of wanted to do real estate. I wanted to do investments and just, I had my sales associate license, my mortgage broker license. And ultimately, I said, this is not good, right? The writing was on the wall. We said, we need to shift elsewhere. I need to do something else in my life. I was working in a law firm, so I figured, you know what? I kind of like it here. Maybe I'll try title work, right? So ended up going to law school, did well there, and the rest is history. And in terms of the trial work, we eventually started doing a lot more trials. It's something that I did not think I'd be doing. I could tell you that. I thought I was going to be a transactional lawyer. I thought I was going to work in title. And I love it. I love trial work. There's nothing better. The adrenaline rush that I get in trial, I get it nowhere else. I mean, it's such a great feeling when you're up there. So I know you guys obviously experience the same thing.
Absolutely.
Except when you're waiting for the verdict that the jury is out, and that's not really the good time. Again, Brad almost died the last, when we saw him, we looked over and inside him.
I do enjoy that, though. I like that feeling of rolling, waiting for that verdict to come out. Oh, boy.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit more, because I hate that feeling, right? That is the worst feeling for me. I can, obviously, there's no issues with cross-exam and directs and openings and jury selection. I have no issues with any of that.
Right.
My biggest scare, or whatever what term you want to use, is when the verdict is being read. Man, that is such a scary feeling.
Especially when you look and you get that feeling, and then you're what people, I think everybody who's been in a lawsuit understands, is that there's a lot on the line for everybody, right? There's money that's obviously the defense, because they could be right. I mean, there's always two sides, right? Or they've put a lot of money in there, and whoever the plaintiff is, if you're in a personal injury, obviously that person's injured, right? That person has their lives are completely altered, and you really don't know. You're at the whim of 6 people, or whatever the case may be, at a jury who you don't know them, and they have your future of your life in your hands. Maybe you can't work for the rest of your life. And first party, hey, right. Look, a roof and damage to a property costs money, and sometimes people don't have that money. So being there, it's like, did I win the lottery or didn't? Right. Like, did I get the winning number here? You just ultimately don't know.
Yeah. So let's set the scene a little bit for people that have never experienced that, right? You're waiting around, sometimes for hours, and all of a sudden they knock on the door, right?
Well,
and your heart drops.
Run it back to when you're done with closing, right? That because it's a process. It's not just you're waiting. It's you're done. You think you wrapped it up in a bow.
Well, right. You're done. Then at some point in time, after closing arguments, you give the case to the jury. The jury goes back for deliberations, and they're there for whatever amount of time that they need to be there in order to render a verdict. And then they knock on the door, and your heart drops. It's so scary, right? Then the little paper gets slipped through the door, right? The verdict.
No. Come on, Frank. You're not setting this up
trying to
properly.
dramatize it a little bit.
He's not setting it up properly. And so everybody can know what happens is they slip a little paper, and it says, and everyone thinks, oh my God, the verdict's coming, and it says, we're hungry.
That's happened.
That's happened. 100%.
That's happened.
So then they order pizza, and then you're in there. This is if it's in a long one, and then all of a sudden you might be, as lawyers down the street, right? We're having like salad, or we're having something. Everybody's kind of worried. Nobody's eating too much, and then you get a phone call, and oh my God, the verdict's read. They have a question. Oh my God. And then you go. So continue, because it's all those times where you're, oh my God. And then it's psych.
No, it's true, and keep adding stuff, please, because I think it's hilarious how we all perceive things, right? As we're going through this. So the paper is typically given to the bailiff, and a lot of times it's folded. And as the lawyers, as the litigants, we're all trying to see what the paper says through the paper, right? Yes. So sometimes they put it up to the light in a little bit. We're trying to see if there's a number towards the bottom, or if there's no certain boxes need to be checked on the verdict form for the plaintiffs to win, and certain boxes need to be checked for the defense to win. So we're all trying to look at to see if we can kind of get an idea as to maybe who won the case, but a lot of times you can't really see it. Then the judge opens a lot of times the verdict form, looks at it, and then gives it to the clerk to read.
Wait, but
the
how
verdict.
the judge looks at it?
Well, and that's the funny part.
Right.
I've seen a lot of times I will see, is he looking at the bottom to see is there a number written in, or is he just looking at the top? But it's hard to tell, and I try to keep my head down so I don't kind of ruin the suspense, because I try to maximize that verdict when it's actually read. But
and then they give the verdict to the clerk. The clerk it feels like days to read the verdict. You're just, come on, hurry it up,
case
please.
Style,
They read the case style, they read the first paragraph, and then they finally get into the actual rulings and the verdict, right? So, but it's so stressful.
Well, sometimes you don't hear the verdict correctly. It happened to me.
Oh yeah.
Remember, you're not in the right state of mind. I think a lot of people don't realize, and everyone who listens to this, and I say this on behalf of all of us here, what it entails to try a case and to try it properly, right? Because anybody can go and just wing it because they think they know the case, but your life stops, right? The office stops. Everything is, and you obviously have other clients who are just as important, but pressing is that case. So everything drops. You're working in the weekends, at nights. When you say you're billing, we underbill almost, because the truth is all we do is talk. I don't stop bothering him on the phone if it's, hey man, what do you think on this theme? How should we present it? And hey, did you read this? Ralph, look at this case. They're going to bring it up tomorrow.
Right.
And it's just your whole life changes, and it's this like hyper focus on one thing. Unfortunately, and we have to balance it with family, right?
Sure.
Frank has his children. I do, you as well.
Yeah,
so
I have 3 kids. Yep.
3. I just had one. Have a baby.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So your whole life has to change, and you have to make a lot of sacrifices. And the clients, I know they've suffered a lot, but it also depends on the case. They don't know what it's wild.
Right.
That you might meet with a client for 10 minutes,
right.
Or an hour, but they go home and go to sleep.
Right.
We are not. Frank's nonstop.
No, definitely. And so, as a little spin-off from that line of questioning, what is maybe the funniest moment that you've ever had in a trial?
I don't know.
And I have a couple. So one was with you, but I do have some.
I don't know how politically correct I need to keep it, but there was a really funny moment. So as I started really at the state attorney's office in Miami-Dade, and I hopped on every trial that I could. I don't care if it was a loser or a winner, because I feel like. And that's, I think one of the things I wanted to speak about for someone who's, getting out of law school, if they can get to the state attorney's office and jump on everything.
Or public defender, right? Either one.
Public defender. Yeah, they were great attorneys at Miami-Dade Public Defender's Office. But there was one case that I had where it was an indecent exposure case. Without getting too into it, somebody was in a car near a school doing something inappropriate, and so he was arrested for it. And so when it came down to trial, I called my officer onto the stand to testify, and he's this big guy, 6'5", and so I obviously asked him, what did you see? And he starts doing a demonstration with the microphone. We'll leave it at that. And it was, something with, no, please just tell the jury we don't need actual demonstrations. I'm trying not to be inappropriate, but that was really funny, because sometimes the witnesses get so nervous that they just, as you know, they just kind of do things that you don't know how to handle at the time.
Well, you probably told them, tell the jury, and then you said, don't do that either. Hold on.
Right.
Let's figure something else out.
Yeah, this is a different forum. This is a public forum. So, yeah, things like that happen, and it's interesting to see how the jury comes out, because I feel like criminal court juries are a little bit more liberal, especially with like DUIs and things. Sure. When it comes to civil, I think they're just a little bit different.
Yeah, no, definitely. The other moment, the funny moment that we had was with you, and I'm sure Ralph can maybe elaborate a little bit more on that, because he knows what I'm referring to.
Go. We've just had a lot of. Brad was every time we're with Brad, we know that something's going to happen, And I know that Brad. Go ahead. Are you talking about the time when he just almost had the heart attack?
Yeah. When he got really red and he walked out, he was so upset at us.
The judge, I think, I don't want to mention the judge's name, but the judge was favorable to us, properly so, right? and Brad, you kept you were breathing hard. At one point, you walked out. You were like getting really red, and Frank is dying at the table, right? Because we have to have a serious face, but we're dying. Right. Like I don't know. I'm crying. He's like, oh my God, Brad needs to calm down. He's gonna.
And that was not intentional. I suppose that was my inner.
And I think you kind of changed it. You started relaxing a little bit on the second trial,
right? But
then when we started preventing some stuff in Mills, right? You just started. Oh my God, Brad's back.
So he got upset. He walked out. Eventually, I went to speak to Brad. He was not happy with me still, right? He told me a couple things outside the courtroom. Wow, and I just told Brad, man, you're going to have a heart attack. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember,
but I go, man,
I don't remember what I said to you, but I remember you saying that to me.
I go, you need to relax a little bit. You're going to have a heart attack.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's a great moment. Another one that we recently had was, so I was already on the third or fourth day of trial. I was exhausted. I was so delirious. I was just completely out of it. Ralph knows what I'm going to say. So I was completely out of it, right? And I went up to one of the whiteboards and I start writing, I think it was some words or something about the case. And I blanked out. I didn't realize I was still in front of the jury. I didn't realize I was in front of the judge. And I drew a happy face and a sad face, right?
Okay.
And the entire argument was, hey, when you first insured this homeowner, you were happy, right? And then I pointed at the happy face.
You tried that in our trial.
What, was it yours?
You tried it.
Oh, then maybe it was your trial, was it?
Yeah. No,
I remember, and I got up and I said, from what I remember,
objected.
I said, could we stop with the happy and sad?
Yeah, you went up.
I forgot it was Brad's trial.
It was Brad.
That's right. I remember that.
He started, and we're all like, what's he doing? And you kind of were like going to draw something else. We don't know where you were going. And you go, so at this date of loss, sad face, and then happy face, and
you're right.
And Brad objects.
I forgot it was, so he is the perfect person to have on as the first
Excellent.
person.
I love it.
Yeah, I was gone. I was gone to the point where, we could not stop laughing after that occurred. It was one of those laughs that you could just tell we're not normal at that point.
Right.
We're just, like Ralph said earlier, you're just completely exhausted. You don't get much sleep. The stress is certainly at an elevated level. Sure. So it was certainly not done on purpose, but it was just something that, it's a funny moment for at least us going back.
Right.
But
yeah, I can't believe that the two funny moments have actually been with Brad. That's funny.
There have been funny moments, and I know that Frank, we had this is early in our career. We were representing with the other firm someone who had a lawn service,
right?
And he's sitting there. This is in federal court in the Southern District, and he just stands up in the middle of he stands up in the stand, and he mentions a comment about his own wife, and you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting there just in shock about what happens,
right?
Because you just don't know. There's so many random things. We had a trial that our witness almost passed out, and the judge says during the proffer, we proffered her witness as an expert, and she were grilling her, and she almost died up there. Like, I'm not kidding. Wow. And she goes, if she does this during testimony, like with a jury, you're like, this is gonna be a mistrial. Like, we can't. Yeah. So we're up there, and this lady's like, she's looking pale. We're sitting there. Oh my God, if she's gonna pass out, she's gonna pass. And she made it out, and she almost passed out outside.
Wow.
You just don't know. I had a question, Brad, and it just kind of a pivot because it's a funny moment. But how do you see, with all the trials that we all do you see there's a change in the juries themselves as how they see first-party cases and damages? You do have, obviously, the issues with premiums, but at the same time, people are homeowners, right? And they've encountered all these hurricanes recently. So, Frank and I always see shifting juries right before Milton and Helene and all that. It seemed like they were shifting towards the insurance company after. Now they're shifting a little back. So How do you see it, and what are you encountering during jury selection and in some of the verdicts?
I actually agree with you. I felt exactly as you felt. I felt like it was kind of swayed a little bit when I started towards the plaintiff side, and I felt like insurance companies a little bit were getting the favor because people were seeing extreme premiums, and I guess they were hearing about fraud and things that were going on, so they kind of tipped the scales towards us. But now, yeah, I see swaying, I think, a little bit back towards your favor. Right. It's very difficult to get juries, and I can tell you that we do a lot of Hurricane Ian cases in Fort Myers. In fact, like as I said before, we're trying one next week.
You told me. Yep.
And very difficult. Almost everyone on that panel has either been through Hurricane Ian, which was like a Cat 5, I think, or had somebody who went through Ian who had an experience, or had a mother, or saw something on the news. And so no matter who is on that panel, I've got to question every single person because somebody through 9 degrees separation of Kevin Bacon has gone through Hurricane Ian. And so it's very difficult, I think, for us right now. But that just, makes us want to work harder to try to get people off the jury that have some biases so everyone can get fair trials.
So let's talk a little bit about that. How do you, obviously that's a tough jurisdiction for you because most people have experienced some of those hurricanes, right? That you're defending against, right? So what do you do in jury selection to sort of figure out what some of the biases are? Any sort of strategies that you have?
Yeah, so I do pretty much the same hypothetical, and I kind of tie it into a little bit of the criminal side, and I put the jury in the position of, hey, let's say you were at a dinner party and you knew you were completely sober and you were pulled over by an officer, and ultimately you did the field sobriety exercises and they took you in anyway and you had to fight it. And then when you get to the courthouse, you find out, you see somebody pulling into the spot. There's a Mothers Against Drunk Driving sticker on the car next to them, and they find out that person is on the jury. So I try to put them into the mix to say, how would you feel if you had your day in court and you're on trial for DUI and somebody who obviously has very strong feelings against DUI is on your jury? How would you feel about that? And the juries kind of say, yeah, that's right. So I try to say that so that, look, you as Mr. Hernandez, if you're the other side, he needs a fair trial, we need a fair trial. So speak up. This is the one aspect where we want you to speak up, because if you are right for the case next door, tell us. We'll get you out of here. But everyone in this trial should get a fair experience. That's kind of what I do.
And, I know there's a couple schools of thought when it comes to jury selection. Some people will say you need to get the people that are biased against you out. Some people say, well, what you really want to do is get the people that are for you in, right? It's probably somewhere in the middle, but do you have any opinions, I guess the both of you, regarding that? What are you looking for during jury selection? And, how do you go about implementing those?
I'm of the school that you need to get people off that are biased, because unless you're paying money to a jury consultant and you're going super high end and you're analyzing all these things, and we don't have the resources to do that, you've really just got to focus, in my opinion, on getting the people off that really just are saying things that clearly show you they shouldn't be here. Does it always work? No. Do they always speak up? No. But at the end of the day, I think it's better to get people off that panel than try to find people that may like me, because I've had people who have nodded with me an entire trial and I lost. I've had people who were sleeping when I was talking and I've won. So I think it's a lot harder to find someone who likes you, per se, and I just try to get as many biased people off. That's just my school of thought on it.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It also may be a situation where who you defend, right? Because you defend a lot of insurance companies. So it may be a situation where people are biased against insurance companies, and those are the ones you obviously want off the jury panel. For us, it may be a little bit different.
Right.
It may be a situation where most people start, let's say, in our favor in terms of a lot of people are homeowners. A lot of people drive cars and have been into some sort of accidents in the past. They're probably a little bit more level playing field when it comes to that. So what we want a lot of times are people that are for us, right? So yeah, there's going to be people that are biased. There's going to be certainly people that don't like insured making claims, right? They think maybe that the premiums that they're paying for their homes are going up because we're making claims, right? So you're going to get those. But I think for the most part, that's maybe 5% of the panel, right?
Sure.
It's a smaller number of the panel, right? So, but for you, you may have a large percentage of the panel who kind of doesn't like insurance companies. So I can see that part of it.
And that's a good point. I don't know. How do you feel? How do you come down on this?
It's in the middle. I mean, you'll have some jurors, for example, that, hey, they want to get out of the jury. Look, I have this to do. I have this to do. And they're just saying, because really at the end of the day, nobody wants to be in a jury. Right? Almost no one, unless you're kind of weird like me. I want to be in a jury. All of us would love to be in a jury. They never pick us because they have other things to do. But it really is, and you know how we always tell them what an important civic duty it is, because it really is. Like if you philosophically and just realistically, they are the ones that decide litigation, right?
Sure.
They are the deciders of the court, other than on appeal. Right. So in the middle, I like to get people off that don't like you, that just kind of give you the evil eye, right? You know, and sometimes something in your gut tells you, and unfortunately they're on that jury, and you got to do your best to do it. Let me ask you this, and kind of going with Frank, what has been have you had a moment where a case, and I think we all had, and I can mention it, where you like, hey, I knew I won, I have this. Like just straight, and the jury just, you know what? They're like, hey, you know what? That guy has a house and you know, he has a policy, he should be covered. Like, is there a case where you're like, hey, you know what? I should not have lost this case?
Yeah. I don't think I've ever, like during the trial, say I've got this, because I think that's bad karma. I always like try to keep it humble. But after the fact, yeah, we had one recently, a Hurricane Ian case that, you know, we should have won, in my opinion. We had the science behind us, and we had, you know, the proper, appropriate testimony. I think we absolutely did the right thing. But we lost it, and I think there's a lot of sympathy for homeowners that comes out there, and I understand it. And sometimes those are the breaks. But you know, I feel like as trial lawyers, if we put 100% into what we do, I can't go home and say to my kid, "I'm upset that we lost this because we put in 100% and the jury felt a certain way."
Right.
It's going to happen. As long as we put 100% in, I feel like we did our jobs.
I think it's a little different on the plaintiff side,
right?
Because you know, on the defense side, you know, you bill your client, right? You bill the insurance company, you make money one way or another. Obviously, you know, it's not great either if you lose trials, because your client's going to look at you and be like, hey, I'm giving you these cases, right? You're representing us. You have to do a good job. And that must be crazy stress on you, because that is your client, right? And you're going to have many trials, and, you know, based on your success rate and how you're settling cases and what you're doing, and that's how you get your cases, you know. But on a plaintiff side, all those costs, everything, the time, there's nothing at the end of if we lose. There's just zero for everyone involved. And then all the costs that the firm put up that's it. It could be 30 grand, 50 grand, that it's gone.
But that's what I think makes you guys really good lawyers, is because, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is what separates you from some of the other trial lawyers, is that you really put your hearts in it. I've seen it in the cases I've tried against you. And I know that you can feel a certain way about losing, and you feel bad for your client if you end up losing, but you guys give 150%. So I respect you both tremendously, and I feel like at the end of the day, you do everything you can for your clients, and I give you much respect for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, one of the things that I love that you do in closing arguments, and because obviously the more cases you try, the different styles you see from different lawyers, right? And one of the things that I always tell Ralph that you do phenomenally, right, is that you make it seem as if the jury doesn't side with you, they're dumb, okay? And you do this a lot. You go, come on, guys. Is that really what you guys are gonna rule, right? Is that really how you guys are gonna find? Look at these facts. Come on, guys. And it's the style that's really effective, I gotta tell you. And I love that style. I think it plants a seed in the jury's mind that says, man, you know, Brad's right. If I don't rule in his favor, I'm dumb, right? Yeah. And in a way, you do that.
You have no common sense.
It's like there's no common sense, right? You tell them, come on, guys, use your common sense, right? Really, does that make sense, right? And you kind of put that seed in their minds, and I think it's phenomenal. I think it's extremely effective. I'm sure that you've won a lot of trials just by planting that seed. Okay, I'm sure, obviously. You're great in every other aspect of trial, but that right at the end, when you plant that seed before they go back to deliberate, is very powerful.
I appreciate that. I feel like that's my favorite part of trial, because everything else, you know, takes a little bit of time, whether you're cross-examining, it's set up, but that is the one time when you can take everything that jury has heard, and now it's your time to tell the jury
And just talk to them.
exactly what the facts showed and how everything ties together. And it
Well,
feels
I feel
amazing.
like you pick on us, like going with what Frank said, you pick on one thing, right? And you look at that one picture,
Right.
and you just get the worst picture for the plaintiff, right? And you're like, really? Like you're trying to get $100,000 for that? For that broken tile? $100,000? Like I get it, it's broken, but 100? Really? Come on. And then
Well, he's also very good at dramatizing it
No,
too,
no,
because
the drama.
he's very good at the pauses, right? Kind of like what you just did right now. He'll pause, he'll show you the picture, pause, and then he'll sort of introduce the, come on, guys.
And
Right?
you let the jury dwell on what you just said. Look at that. And then the jury's like, and then everyone in their head is saying, yeah, man, like that bubble on the wall, right?
The bubble on the
are
wall.
you kidding? Like, what are we doing here? And then the jury's like, yeah, like, okay, they have a policy of insurance, but should they cover and pay $50,000? Yeah, I think that's what one of them was. You said the number was like $50,000 or $60,000. $60,000 for that?
Well, I mean,
that's $5,000 and more, something like that.
well, when he says it like that, it's not just the jury. Sometimes I sit there and I'm like, yeah,
Right,
you know
yeah,
what?
yeah,
That's
I know.
well, he's got a point sometimes,
He's got a point, he's got a point.
Well, I feel like that gets lost in a lot of the newer generation attorneys, right? Because even if you look at public speakers, they'll tell you, you need to pause, you need to inflect in your voice. It's not just monotone. Some people get up there and it's just monotone from start to finish.
Oh, yeah.
And you know that. You can't, you're there advocating. And so those pauses and those dramas, I think that's part of the job.
It is true because you can make, pardon my French, chicken salad out of chicken, crap. But sometimes we've lost a trial against some of the worst lawyers I've ever seen. And it just, the facts weren't there. That jury, going back to jury selection, Frank, it's that jury selection. And one thing I notice about juries, because you can have, juries are smarter than you think, right? You may think there's someone who hasn't gone to school, is just sitting there. Oh, that guy, no, that guy's paying attention, and they'll hold you to something.
Right.
I'm just thinking about a case with a pipe, with the pipe, and our expert made a comment, and they're like, okay, and you think the jury's on, and they were on our side.
Right.
They were. We had them in our hands until their expert came up, and their expert mentioned something, and he's like, yeah, but there's no break here, and then the jury's like, you know what? Your expert said there was where's the break?
Right.
And we thought we cleared it up, that you didn't need a break. It's like a cast iron issue. And they just stuck to that one little thing that we mentioned, that our expert mentioned, and they just kind of held on to that. Yeah. And I don't know who in the jury's the one that held on, because they talk, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that the juries are becoming a little bit more conservative, and certainly maybe a little bit more pro-insurance companies. I think it may be swaying back a little bit towards the middle, but I still think that the juries tend to be a little bit more conservative, especially in Miami-Dade lately. But let's talk about jury selection, because you just mentioned that. Remember that case where I asked whether there was any individual in the panel, whether they had experience in kitchen cabinetry? Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And so sometimes you will ask the question, but the answer is not necessarily given to you. I asked specifically, does anybody have any experience in kitchen cabinetry, right? It ended up being that one of the jurors that made it on our panel was one of the biggest cabinetry makers or owners of a kitchen cabinet company in Florida.
Wow. And never said anything.
And never said anything.
He did Messi's Kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Messi, okay.
Exactly, the Messi. So he did his kitchen, and he got onto the panel. Eventually, he was removed, and we inserted the the alternate. But sometimes you just will ask the question, and you won't get the answer you're looking for, right? You got to ask it in different versions too.
By the way,
right?
he would have been a good juror in a way, because you remember he says he knows how much it costs those kitchen cabinets and how much it costs to replace, because they all break. But we didn't want to risk it.
Right.
Remember that? We had a big thing on whether we want, because he kept coming up to us, hey, during the trial, because he was on the jury, and eventually he kept coming up, hey, I forgot to mention, how many things did he say? I just want to disclose this. He did it like 2 or 3 times. It wasn't just the kitchen. It was something else.
Well, he spent during jury selection talking to me for maybe 20, 30 minutes. I mean, this is an individual that I went thorough into, right? Asked him a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah.
And just failed to disclose that. So, it's tough sometimes. You
That is
really
tough.
don't know. These panels are typically 40 to 50 people, right? And you're essentially interviewing them for a very important position. And you're only interviewing or talking to them for maybe 5 minutes. It's not a long time, right? It's not a long time at all. So it's tough. Jury selection's tough. You never know what you're going to get out of jury selection.
And that's true. And that's, it's interesting you bring that up, because I feel like what you really should do is, some people, when they question, they will say, whoever agrees, raise your hand. Well, that's easy to do. You got to speak to them individually. And I think more times than not, that'll happen, but I think you'll cut that out instead of saying everyone raise your hand or tell me you feel the same way, because then everyone's just going to kind of raise their hand.
Well, and then people change their answers, right? They'll tell you something, and then the judge asks them, look, you mentioned this. If I instruct you on the rules and on the evidence in the court, are you going to follow them? Yeah. Yes. No, they're not. They just told you something completely different. And in a way, they kind of freak out when the court asks them, and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to follow. No, they're not. Yeah, you already know they're biased. And then they end up on the jury panel, and in the back of your mind, you're like, oh my God.
It happens.
Oh, yeah.
I did not want to have that person, And Frank knows, it only takes one person in that jury to just swing everybody else around. Everybody's like, oh no, let's give that nice old lady $30,000 for her house. And that one person's like, look, I like her, but I can't in good conscience do it. And I'll tell you why. And then somebody's like, yeah. And then you know what? Then it's getting late. It's Friday. And then they think that's another thing. They think they're on the clock like they have to, and they don't want to come back on a Monday. So some of them, because it's not their house, right? They're like, okay, fine, whatever. Let's,
Yep.
Or we'll give her 10 grand and let's just go.
Right.
And then it might not even beat a PFS, right? A proposal for settlement. So
That's true.
So we only have a few minutes left. Let's just real quick go around and basically let's give a little bit of advice to somebody that wants to go to law school in a few seconds.
If you're going to law school, my advice is to focus on that LSAT. It is what it is. I feel like if you maximize that score, unfortunately, we live in the United States and status is important. And if you maximize that score and you have options with a super great school, or you get now scholarships, now you can run the game. Now you can dictate where you're going to move your family, what kind of money you're going to receive. Maximize that LSAT, get into school. And if you like trial work, my advice is, if you can get to the state attorney's office or public defender's office, do it. And my advice would be to hop on every single trial that you can. It doesn't matter if you win or lose, get the experience. Yep. And hopefully you'll love trial law like we love trial law, and become a successful trial lawyer.
You, Frank? No, I'll say something after.
Yeah. Well, my advice is, not everyone has to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? Make sure you are fully committed and interested in the law before you commit to going to law school. It is not an easy career, and I think that your heart has to be in it, right? I think that's really, really important. So don't just do it to do it. Do it because you want to do it. Do it because you want to help people. Do it because it's a passion of yours. Then go to law school.
Love it.
I agree with Frank. I agree with both of you. Obviously, great advice. I think also, if you want to get into the law, try to do some kind of an internship or work at a law firm, and try to get your hands into more than simply just pushing papers, because there's so much to the law. And we'll have, for example, paralegals or girls that help and guys that help with discovery or employees, but they don't really know the law, right? They're not on our side as much as they think they do. So try to get your hands in it, and in all different kinds. Because maybe, like you said, you will pick an area that you kind of like, and then you're like, wow, I really like this. I went to law school blind completely. I knew a lot about politics, but that has nothing to do with the law. Completely different. I had no idea what a complaint was. I had no idea. In fact, 2 years into law school, I had no idea what a complaint was. Right? You don't know, because you're dealing with you're dealing with appellate. It's not the movement of really how things get done in the law.
Right.
And that's what I would say. I would say get some experience before also.
And I will just say that's a great point, right? The best thing I think about being a lawyer is that there's so many different things you can do. Yeah. If you want to sit in an office, you could go do transactional. You want to do trial law, you'll be in court, but you can think of something for your personality, whatever it is that you like, you'll find it in the law, and that's why I love it so much.
That's very true. Brad, this was phenomenal.
Thank
This
you.
was great. I think we got to do this again. This was really, really
I
fun.
would love to. Very much
Thank you, Mr.
appreciate
Carson.
No, there's a lot of topics I would love to talk about, you know.
Definitely.
So, but maybe next time. And thank you for coming. Really
Thanks
appreciate
for having
it.
me. Very much appreciated.
Of course.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.